Hey folks, it's Nate. Thanks for joining me once again as we look to the horizon. And as promised, now that I have a pretty good mock-up of what my cover is going to look like, I have brought it to you in this video. I'm pretty satisfied with how this image looks. It's not the final image, but it's very close to it. The artist is still doing a couple of final renders, retouching some things, and gonna add a few more lines of text to the cover. But what you see here is pretty much what we're gonna have on the cover of the book when it's done. This was painted by Zevius, a longtime graphic artist who did a lot of work with me to get this exactly the way that we wanted it. He had a lot of questions, he had a lot of ideas, he had a lot of feedback, and it took probably a month to get to this point. That said, I think it was time well invested, and he's done a very good job taking the disparate pieces of information and reference photos and names and places and dates that I gave him and making a pretty good image based on what I wanted. Furthermore, what I really liked about working with him is that he understood I was trying to tell a story just on the cover of the book. I didn't just want a static image of a character standing there looking towards or away from the audience, or maybe in profile looking like he's thinking about something. I wanted a very short story in a single image on the cover of the book to entice people to try and find out more and understand how this brief vignette came about. I think overall, we managed that in this picture. Of course, Burning Bright is not a story for everyone, and this cover may dissuade some people who might have been drawn in by a more generic cover. And I guess that's kind of going to be a trade-off. But my hope is the intrigue of the cover will balance out the loss of people who are less interested in this kind of fantasy story. So, with all of that said, what is the update on the actual writing that I'm doing this week? Well, right now I am wrapping up things for the year. I have just maybe half a chapter left to do in the Gospel According to Earth, and then I will have that work done. I really haven't embarked on a project this ambitious in quite some time, not since I started publishing fiction on my blog some 10 years ago. While the Triad World novels did not start out planned as a large overarching story, unlike the Project Sumter Files, which was my previous major fiction project, I do really like that I managed to put together a large and fairly coherent story, even though the construction of that story was more impromptu than the Sumter Files. I think that is a clear sign that I have grown as a writer and am more able to put together stories coherently. Of course, planning and hard work was still a big part of it, but I think the ability to improvise a little bit more shows that the focus on shorter stories and honing my craft through them has really paid dividends. I have also pretty much fleshed out the list of articles I want to do in between the end of the Gospel According to Earth and the beginning of my next fiction project, which I have pretty much definitively decided on. I'm going to do a Roy Harper story called A Candle in the Wind. It's going to be a very different kind of story compared to previous Roy Harper stories. It's going to take place a lot more in a settled and civilized area of the country, and it's going to focus much more on how Roy deals with large groups of people who are not related to him in any way, as well as the handful of people that he knows and really cares about. It's a very different aspect of life, and I think one that we need to see from a character such as Roy, who is very abrasive and not always good at dealing with people. If you only put him in a situation where he can deal with people who know and trust him, we'll never get the pleasure of seeing him deal with a lot of people who just rub him the wrong way. Of course, there are a lot of other things that I want to tackle in this story, and I'll be talking about them more as we get closer to starting said story. I think right now, as things stand, that will probably be somewhere around the end of February, but we'll see. As you know, I tend to come up with new ideas and kind of spin them off as time goes along. Now, I've done a third short story for Iron Age Media, which I'm going to link down below. And this is the day when the poll for stories in the monthly voting competition should go up, at least in theory. I don't know if it's actually going to go up today. I'm going to keep an eye out, and if it is up by the time this video goes up, I will link it below. If not, I will link it next week. I'm not actually sure if there is a specific date when that poll is supposed to appear. So more on that as things develop. That's all I got for you this week. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. There's a like button and a subscribe button down there. You can use those as you see fit. And I'll talk to you